let's get to this news here. It's not great. It's not great. I'm going to be very clear about this. Many of us have family members who have struggles with mental illness. Now, I'm going to say that there appears to be a mental illness component because that's what the court documents indicate. To my knowledge, I do not know that to be a fact. I do not know that Tony Ferguson has been diagnosed with any kind of formal illness. I am making an assumption there. I want to be very clear about that. I'm not happy to make that assumption, but it appears to be the rational one supported by the evidence. Now, I had to deal with mental illness in my family in a pretty tragic way. My mother took her own life after a bout with mental illness. But there are many, many different kinds of mental illness. Some are very treatable. Some are a little harder to treat. Some require a lot of effort and ongoing assessment. There's all kinds of range of effects. Some people deal with self-harm. Some people don't. There's just a lot of unknowns here. And I don't want to scare anybody. I don't want to say anything bad. Yes, my life ended up with someone in my family on the more tragic end, but that's not necessarily what I'm suggesting here at all. It could be very treatable. In fact, I was having a discussion with somebody else in the industry, and they were like, do you think Tony's going to fight again? Yeah, I do, actually. He appears to have people in his life that are doing everything they possibly can to get him, at least it appears, a proper evaluation so they can begin to address whatever the problem may be. And that gives me some hope. But what is the issue? Now, I'm going to read this from MMA Junkie because they're the ones, to the best of my knowledge, that broke the story. But here's the deal, as best we understand it. The wife of former UFC interim lightweight champion Tony Ferguson on Wednesday filed a restraining order alleging domestic violence. Now, when she says violence, she doesn't mean against her or her child, but a general disturbance in the home, which the details will help you understand better. According to online records, Christina Ferguson filed the restraining order in Orange County. An ex parte hearing took place the same day. California has laws that facilitate these kinds of things. The court's Domestic Violence Prevention Services Project has a scheduled investigation for March 22nd and then a hearing on April 5th. Now, some of the details are not immediately available, but the court's definition of domestic violence restraining order is an order that helps protect people from abuse or threats of abuse from someone they have a close relationship with. MMA Junkie obtained 5 police incident reports that detail several domestic disturbances at the Ferguson residence since January 2018, including 3 in the past month. The police reports were redacted, blah, 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 blah. Tony Ferguson has never been arrested or charged with a crime in any of those situations. Tony Ferguson's management, Paradigm Sports, issued a statement saying, quote, "This is a private family matter that is in the process of being resolved." The restraining order was filed less than 1 week after 6 police units were dispatched to the Ferguson home in Santa Ana. Christina Ferguson told police that she was at her parents' house in La Mirada this past Friday when Tony took their 2-year-old son back to their house and changed the locks on the doors. She said she didn't fear for the child's safety, and officers left after determining there was no custody order and no crime committed. On February 19th, police conducted a welfare check on Tony Ferguson after he made unknown threats, and his wife and son left the house, according to a separate police report. Police spoke to an unidentified female who stated Tony Ferguson had, quote, "not slept for 3 days and was tearing apart the home," end quote, and, quote, "broke apart the fireplace and believed someone had placed a computer chip in his leg," end quote. An unidentified male who'd called the police said the fighter had told him, quote, "someone was inside his walls," end quote. Nearly 2 hours after the police made contact, Christina Ferguson told police her husband's trainer couldn't get him to leave the house to see a doctor. 3 days earlier, on February 16th, Christina Ferguson called police from a nearby park after leaving their home. She said that while Tony Ferguson hadn't been violent to her or anyone else, she was concerned for her husband's well-being. In police comments on the incident report, she reported that, quote, "he kept throwing holy water on her, and his condition, redacted in the report, had been getting worse. He'd also refused to go to the hospital for an evaluation." When officers showed up to their house, one advised Tony Ferguson to see a doctor. He agreed to go and was not deemed a danger to himself or others. But Christina Ferguson was advised to take their child to her parents' house. In more than one police report, officers note Ferguson is a UFC fighter and owns a taser. They are advised to send multiple units for any calls. That's just police protocol. And of course, the restraining order against Ferguson comes on the heels of UFC President Dana White commenting on social media that Ferguson had, quote, personal issues. When asked by a fan about Ferguson's absence, White said he's dealing with a lot of personal issues right now and can't fight. Hopefully things turn around for him and he can get back in there. Now, since then, his wife has issued a very brief statement to the media. Here is what she said. Tony Ferguson is a good husband and a good father to our son. The current legal proceedings are a part of the process to ensure that Tony will receive the help necessary to continue being the best possible, as well as to pursue his passion and career as a UFC champion fighter. All positive well wishes are sincerely appreciated, and I hope our privacy will be respected. Now, Tony Ferguson has since posted on social media saying a series of interesting things, some of it against Dana White, some of it just about training and sort of vague allusions to trust and why trust is important. He also goes after, like I said, he goes after Dana White for a second. He puts in his own tweet, Tony does, quote, anyone that wears sunglasses inside deserves to have that happen to them, end quote. And then Tony writes, that's a statement from Dana White after my knee accident when I was wearing prescription glasses. And then he says that I'm still thick and thin, a UFC company man, WMEIMG. So that is what we know. That is what we know, which is to say we do not know much. What to make of that? I would like to have a discussion, but I would like to have a responsible one about this because nobody really knows the exact details here. Obviously, I hope that medical professionals get a chance to assess him to see what, if anything, is wrong, and if there is, to have that be addressed. I have wondered, I don't know if this is fair or not, I have wondered if part of his eccentric personality was just that, or was that a prelude to something a little bit more concerning? Right? Is he just sort of a quirky, interesting guy who can sometimes say things that don't quite match up to what I think he thinks he's saying? Is that just sort of harmless banter, or is there a tell there about some other condition that could be lying beneath that, if it goes unaddressed, could exacerbate something that could be treatable, but without treatment can cause conditions like this? I don't know. It's something that I'm thinking. I will say this, there does appear to be a common thread of, from Tony, skepticism about medical authorities. Remember, when he got his surgery, he trusted them to get the surgery done. But you'll recall he did most of the PT himself. He believes in a lot of his own ideas about rehabilitation, maintenance, fitness, well-being, self-preservation, self-drive, right? He's very much committed to his own ideas, which you have to say is a huge component of his success, right? I mean, look at the timeline in which he came back from that knee injury. He was on the same card as Nurmagomedov and McGregor and won against a former champion via stoppage, no less, or the corner threw in the towel because of a broken hand, but he was doing quite well, as we all know. It was a back and forth, but you get the idea. And I think he is a believer in how strong a mind can be to compel somebody to do something, whether it's maintaining weight, cutting weight, getting through a training session, running all the road work that you have to do, dealing with pain, dealing with setback, dealing with frustration, dealing with haters. Remember, he cried after his win over Pettis, how much it meant to him. I wanted to ask him about it to get him on the show. To my knowledge, he's not been on anyone's shows since then. So I just couldn't tell. And he was saying, you guys have no idea what I've dealt with and what I've been dealing with. I didn't doubt him then, but I am quite certain he's right now. Let me just be very clear about this. Everybody on this show wishes only the best for him, for his child, for his wife, for his family, for his home and property, and everything in between. So when I ask for how you guys out there feel about it, I'm not going to tolerate anybody who's got games to play today. It's a serious situation. I don't know how serious, but in an abundance of caution, I think it's worth, I don't know about pearl clutching necessarily, but taking the gravity of the situation seriously. You know, when the police are having to arrive at your home and your loved ones are having to take what I would consider fairly drastic actions, there's trouble. There's trouble. Now, the good news is it does not appear to be malevolence. When Tony was on The Ultimate Fighter and he got drunk, which is a thing he's cleaned up in his life, but back then that turned into a little bit of malevolence towards his peers and the sort of the ugly things he would say. He seems to have worked past that. So I am in no position to make any kind of diagnosis about what is wrong. I'm not even going to attempt. I'm not going to attempt to say how serious it is, other than the one thing I do feel comfortable in saying is it does appear that, if not a medical intervention, some kind of assessment and potential supervision. I'm not talking about, him being locked up. That's not what I'm saying. But some kind of, routine medical checkup at a bare minimum appears to be in order. There are questions about whether he will fight again, and if again, how soon. I don't know the answer to them. I don't think anybody really does. It's just impossible to say. I don't in any way think that Ferguson won't re-enter the octagon, but if you press to give me a timeline, I couldn't do it. I don't know what to say about that. So we are dealing with a lot of unknowns here. We are dealing with a lot of uncertainty here. We are dealing with some distressing facts. I think Tony Ferguson has converted a lot of people and gotten them to like what he has to say and what he's done and what he stood for. And that's been off the sweat of his brow through setback and everything else. But it appears that there are some greater troubles beneath the surface. And what's going to happen, we only hope the best. But we're going to have to see. Thank you guys so much for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel. There's other videos you can watch right here. If you've never heard my SiriusXM radio show, there's a link in the description box below. You can try it for free for 30 days. The Luke Thomas Show airs weekdays, 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern on SiriusXM Fight Nation, Channel 93. Catch y'all next time.